To quickly introduce who we are and what we do. We are a data and analytics consulting company, and since 2003, we've been helping organizations do more with their data. Our consultants specialize in the entire data and analytics lifecycle, from strategy to implementation. So that means that we're helping companies make sense of their data, and we're helping their data teams change the way they work with data so that our customers are equipped to transform the way they do business. Our featured speaker today on the call is Christina Salmi, our Managing Director of Data Strategy. She truly is the perfect person to be discussing this topic because I'm not sure there's anyone out there more passionate about this topic. She's been with Analytics8 for 12 years, having started as a consultant and moving her way up the ranks to now our Managing Director of Data Strategy. Christina has a true passion for all things data related, but especially data strategy and data governance. Over the years, she has helped customers across all industries by equipping them with the knowledge and tools that they need to improve the use of their data. Another little fun fact I wanted to share to give you an idea about how data-driven she really is. When she was pregnant with her son, Jack, she shared with the team over Slack the book that she was reading to prepare for parenthood. All right, so like I said before, as you have questions along the way, please drop them into the chat window and we will get them answered live or at the end of the presentation. I'll hand it over to you, Christina.
Great, thanks, Jen. Welcome, everyone. So when we updated this presentation from the version we gave a few years ago, it was a great opportunity to reflect on how the needs of companies have changed and the types of questions we get about data strategy now versus back then. You all know that data is a huge asset. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. And today it is pretty mainstream for companies to understand that data is a huge asset and to recognize the need for a data strategy. Often they just don't know where to start, which is great because it means we can get down to brass tacks when talking about data strategy. So maybe you fall into this category where you don't yet have a formal data strategy. Perhaps you've made some targeted investments, maybe in a new technology or a larger team, but you're not seeing the results you need, and maybe you're here to see how a data strategy can help. Or maybe you fall into this category where you do have a data strategy, but it's not giving you what you need. Perhaps you've completed a successful initial project and then lost momentum and buy-in, or you invested in a new tool, but it feels like you have the same chaos just in a new location. Or maybe you have not achieved the data democratization that was promised. Or perhaps, like many of us, you've had changes in your business strategy and parts of your data strategy are no longer relevant. These are all reasons to revisit your data strategy and consider how applying best practices can get you back on track. Companies know they need and want to become more data-driven. Sure, data-driven might be a buzzword that you find on trendy data terms bingo, but the intention of the term is meaningful, even if the usage of it is inconsistent. Organizations with a data-driven culture are utilizing data insights to improve business. Statistics show that more companies are investing in data, but still very few feel they have actually become data-driven. Clearly, there's a big gap between investing money in data and actual improvements to the business. It is possible, it just requires a good data strategy. So I think the main reason a lot of people are here today is because they want to know exactly what is in a data strategy.
Yes, I believe so. Before you tell them, we would first like to quiz the audience quickly to see what they think. So a poll should be popping up for you. What should your data strategy consist of? A data architecture design with recommendations on the best stack, a roadmap that defines the people, processes, technology, and data to support your business objectives, a plan to integrate your disparate data, or a framework to democratize your data and get more people across the organization using analytics. So please choose what you think is the correct answer.
I feel like we should have added Jeopardy music now.
Yes. I'm not volunteering to sing that either. All right, so the results are in, and 84% of our audience says number 2.
Awesome. Good job, guys. Yeah, so obviously a data strategy may include all of these items, but at its core, at the core of a good data strategy, we have a roadmap and a roadmap to achieve business objectives with data and analytics. And that plan should be tracked and revisited, and it should include elements of people, process, technology, and data. Speaking of, so that last part is not always obvious to some organizations. Technology is often the shiny new toy that starts the conversation, but we know that technology alone will not yield business impact with data and analytics. Really, it has to be more than that. It has to include all these things: people, process, technology, and data. A modern and comprehensive data strategy factors in all the relevant dependencies that need to be in place for data and analytics projects to be effective. When your data strategy includes all 4 areas, it becomes the foundation to building a data-driven culture. So data strategy can be theoretical, and the purpose of this presentation today is to make it practical and tangible with real-life examples. So to do that, we're going to be highlighting one example as we go through the 7 elements, and that company is CareQuest and their pursuit of a data strategy. So CareQuest Institute for Oral Health is a national nonprofit organization that focuses on creating more accessible, equitable, and integrated oral health systems. Like many companies, CareQuest realized that there was more power and insight in their data that they could and should be leveraging to better serve their customers and the community. They also already had an idea of certain areas that were limiting the value their data was providing and the support they were able to provide the business with data. This included limitations due to infrastructure, organization of their data, and organization of their teams. We really loved working with CareQuest. Our company vision at Analytics8 is to build a better future with data. And so to have an opportunity to work with a company like CareQuest and help them build and implement a data strategy to support their mission has just been so rewarding. I'll share more about this example as we go through the elements, and you can also look them up on LinkedIn to see more about the amazing ways they are using data to build a better future. So these are the 7 elements of a data strategy that we've defined. This list is not meant to be a process or an exhaustive list of data strategy. We've worked with hundreds of customers, and these are 7 important components we've identified that have to be in an effective data strategy. Now let's get to each one. The first element of data strategy that we'll discuss is alignment with the business. So I know I said that these elements are not in sequential order, but if I had to pick the most important place to start, it would actually be this one. So after this one, then they are in no particular order. The biggest risk to any data or analytics project is that it's not aligned to the business needs or business objectives. There are a lot of things that you could do with data. Some of them are really valuable, and a lot of them are just noise. A common quote that we hear from companies is that they have lots of data, but no insights. This is an indicator of misalignment between business strategy and data strategy. Risks of not aligning data strategy with business strategy include not implementing the right projects at the right time, money and time wasted, and loss of momentum and future funding when early projects don't yield benefits to the business. Another risk is that you end up with an environment that feels chaotic. When there's no driving influence or prioritization, this results in constant fire drills and stressed out employees, which is really not something that you want to be dealing with in today's labor market. The biggest pitfall that I see companies run into if they don't have a good data strategy is that they invest all this time and money into getting a bunch of stuff into a shiny new tool or platform, and then it's all just sitting there and the business isn't getting value out of it. So what does it take to achieve alignment? Perhaps the most obvious is inclusion of the business as stakeholders, as owners, and in the design and planning and decision-making. Business involvement is critical to ensure that what we are building with data and analytics will be useful to the business. This means we need to assign business ownership to data definitions and interview business stakeholders when we're gathering requirements. Other factors include assessing readiness. Is this the right time for a data strategy? Will the right players be available to contribute to planning? Do we have buy-in in the appropriate places? Executive support is not only required to secure funding, but to promote participation and cooperation in the planning phase, as well as adoption of the analytics solution by the business. And finally, building a strategic roadmap. Pursuing very technical initiatives, such as implementing data in a cloud or writing data transformation code, it can be really easy to lose sight of our bigger picture goals. That's why it's critical to lay out a complete path to our goals using a roadmap and stick to it. When prioritizing data and analytics projects, we should ask the question, what is the business motivation for pursuing this? Or phrased a different way, what business objective will drive support for this initiative? Even seemingly technical projects can be traced back to the reason it will indirectly benefit the business. For example, a back-end upgrade that improves performance could mean that business users now have access to complex analytics they couldn't have achieved before in a timely manner. And maybe that means now they can ask questions that they couldn't ask of the data before and make revenue increasing product decisions. Making these connections allows us to strategize which data and analytics use cases will be valuable and impactful to the business and ensure that we're investing in something that will be used by the business. Finding the business motivation for pursuing data and analytics initiatives isn't always easy. It can be especially challenging when the maturity of business strategies vary from company to company or even from business domain or department to department. This is where well-run stakeholder interviews can help. In these interviews, we don't want to just ask about the reports that they're using. We want to guide the conversation by asking business questions. What are they trying to accomplish? What are the business drivers to get there? We can getting them talking about their day-to-day, what's important to them. And as we help them think outside the box and think about all these factors, we can bring up things like comparing to industry standards. Across industries, there's sets of standards, a set of standard business drivers. How is your data serving each of those drivers today, and which areas are missing out on data insights? Identifying the business motivation and impacted business drivers can be difficult, but uncovering it will pay dividends when we're prioritizing, tracking impact, and telling success stories. Okay, so I mentioned that we're going to be giving examples to make this practical for you guys. So here's a real life example. This is how we align data strategy to business strategy for CareQuest. So for CareQuest, becoming technology independent was a driving reason that they approached us for help, but they were also aware that data and analytics would be key to furthering their mission of achieving better health for all. And that needed to get to that, they needed to build a strategic plan to achieve it. CareQuest has been very successful in their data strategy journey, and at the foundation of that success was an early alignment with the business. Key stakeholders from each department were made available during the design of their data strategy, interviewed, and the use cases collected were able to drive increasing executive support, buy-in across the organization, and build momentum for data and analytics initiatives. It also factored into designing the optimized path forward. Understanding business user objectives highlighted capabilities that the new platform should have and would be required to enable the various types of users, business users, and data scientists at CareQuest. It also informed decisions about data organization, architecture, and modeling. Alignment with the business helped with prioritization, enabling CareQuest to determine of all the wonderful things that they could do with data and analytics, where is the most valuable place to start? In what order should data be ingested and curated? And in finding those low-hanging fruit that would provide immediate value while building a foundation to be iterated upon and expanded in each additional phase. So that wraps up the first element of data strategy. So on to element number 2. The second element of a successful data strategy is maturity evaluation. Understanding where an organization is today in data and analytics maturity sets a baseline for designing a data strategy and helps us plot a realistic path forward. To help our customers visualize where they are today and where they want to go, we use a data and analytics maturity model. Again, it's a journey and a natural progression companies take over time and at the right time. And as each organization grows and changes, they will find new motivation to increase their data and analytics maturity to the next level to sustain growth, remain competitive, or achieve goals. A big part of data strategy is communication. And slides like these help communicate to others throughout the organization where we are today, where we want to go, and why. To just circle back to the CareQuest example again, and highlight this, we'll pull up their maturity model. So at the time that we were designing CareQuest data strategy, we observed characteristics from chaotic, reactive, defined, and managed maturity levels. But on average, they were somewhere between reactive and defined. Knowing where they were today, or at that point in time, we were able to identify key areas to move to the next level of maturity. Within that, we're able to kind of tackle that urgent need for technology independence, as well as the components that would be required to support the additional business use cases that we uncovered. So with a solid plan in place, a lot of hard work, and great teamwork, CareQuest was able to make an impressive amount of progress in a short amount of time. We will continue to talk more in upcoming sections about many factors that enabled this quick progress. After designing the data strategy, CareQuest invested in their plan and had several successful phases of implementation, which addressed all the key areas identified to increase maturity. And the business is benefiting. Data is accessible across the organization and being used in board meetings and to achieve business goals. We'll talk more about these benefits in the upcoming sections as well. And that wraps element 2, maturity evaluation. Element 3 of a successful data strategy is architecture and technology. There are so many powerful and innovative tools on the market today, but that landscape can be overwhelming. So I want to challenge you all to change the way you think about your architecture. So instead of framing your goals like this, we want the newest technologies, or saying things like we want a data lakehouse or we want a data warehouse. Instead, I want you to think about approaching architecture from a different point of view. Think about it from the perspective, we want what will give the business access to the right information at the right time. If we use that as our guiding objective, we can design and build a solution that will result in better user adoption and resulting business impact. Sure, that design may end up including new technology or a data lakehouse, but there are a lot of great options out there, and we want to find the right fit for what your organization is trying to achieve. And you don't have to start from scratch. Here's some tips for navigating that vast sea of options available. First off, processes and methodologies. At Analytics8, we've developed a really robust and thorough tool selection process, which involves an early elimination round to narrow down of that vast sea, what are the 4 or 5 tools we should consider for each layer, and then thinking about the custom criteria prioritized individually for each customer. Some customers are going to care more or less, or certain factors can be more or less important to some customers versus others. And then do an evaluation of the tools against that custom criteria to find the right fit tool for each layer. Another option is to consider well-known or even recent architecture patterns that are out there today. There's proven technology combos out there, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You still just want to kind of think about customizing it and making sure it is a right fit for your organization. And then lastly, taking a modular approach, designing for different stages of the data lifecycle. We want to incorporate new technology, but we also want to think about how they integrate together, and future-proofing our architecture by doing that will enable us to kind of move out components as needed. So gone are the on-prem days when we strove for one technology to do everything. Almost just made a Lord of the Rings reference there, but now we will have an ever-expanding marketplace of tools that specialize in specific parts of the data lifecycle, but still integrate well together. Instead of one tool that did everything okay and some things poorly. So when you plan for a data strategy, make sure that you're considering the end-to-end data lifecycle and design a forward-thinking modular solution that not only uses the right tool for the right job, but is future-proofed and modularized so we can swap out parts as needed and as our needs and the technology and changes. And CareQuest did just that. In addition to future-proofing, designing a future-proof and scalable solution, other key areas that CareQuest considered when designing their future architecture was performance tuning and flexibility for CareQuest's different user types. They have biostatisticians, analysts, data engineers, dashboard developers. We also did a cost analysis there to kind of understand, project out the different usage patterns of those different user types, and then map that against the different license types of the options available on the market. We also considered turnaround time on IT requests, such as adding new users, and increased costs to manage security. By taking special care to find their right fit, CareQuest is now thriving with their forward-thinking, flexible architecture. They've achieved scale for ingestion and processing that they were looking for. Jobs that took days previously now process in minutes. Ingesting and developing new clinic data now takes 2 weeks instead of 2 months. Users have better access to the type of data they need, whether it's curated or whether it's from the data lake for machine learning. And importantly, their partners can feel confident and comfortable with the robust security, confidentiality, and integrity of the environment. Their data is secure with CareQuest, and that means there's more opportunities to collaborate with data and gain more powerful insights, which will improve people's lives. And with that, we've completed the section on architecture and technology. All right, the fourth element of a successful data and analytics strategy focuses on the data and analytics team, considering the right structure, roles, and the best way to support them. So even as the economy is cooling off, the labor market is still burning up. So as a shout out to the previous section that we were just on, our CTO actually pointed out that modern technology can help with this. Embracing modern technology means that there's a bigger pool of talent to recruit from, and employees are just more interested to work on projects with modern tech because it's exciting and less stressful since you're not working against the grain of a tool that doesn't work great. The labor shortage also means that we need to be creative and flexible when creating a realistic team and while creating org structures to support the business's use of data and analytics. So there's a lot of terms out there to describe operating models. Data management organization is a more recently popular one. Terms like networking, federated, distributed. These are all great food for thought. It's really great. It's a great idea to keep up to date with all the frameworks that are out there and working for others. We should consider all the options and then find the combination of features from them that will work best within your organization. There is not a one size fits all. But to simplify, let's think of the options in 3 main groups. So 3 options are centralized, decentralized, and hybrid. Before any formal planning happens, organizations may find themselves in a decentralized model to start with. Grassroots efforts usually spring up across departments, and these are, when this happens, the good thing is that they're closely tied with what the business needs and wants, which is great. But the downside is that there might be lacking inconsistency, lack of efficiency, as departments are often doing redundant data management tasks within each of those silos. Frequently, some version of a hybrid model, which combines elements from both sides, is the best fit for organizations. However, smaller organizations may find it simpler and more cost-effective to lean more towards the centralized model, with a data and analytics team which serves all departments, producing data sets and self-service dashboards. Meanwhile, for example, each department could have their own business analyst. For larger companies, or as companies mature, they can maintain some aspects of a centralized data management office and explore options such as dedicated pods for certain departments to increase domain knowledge, or other options such as a federated model or treating data as a product with product owners distributed in different business areas. Another way to think about team organization as the company grows or matures is about aligning dedicated teams with the front and back end components of the data lifecycle. So there's lots of different options here, but both dedicated groups, for example, could be housed within a data management organization, or you could house the back end team within a data management organization, and the front end developers could fit within separate business units supported by, for example, a collaborative community of practice. So that's one way that you can establish consistency and standards while still having some of the distributed. So there's a lot of really great ideas within all these kind of standard operating models that are out there. And it's like I said before, a really good idea just to kind of sit down and look at all the components of them and then pick and choose one that's going to be a best fit for your organization and fit organically with how you're structured today, what your goals are, and what your existing staff and skill sets look like. So unlike other sections, I'm not going to use CareQuest for the staffing example, but I did want to look at a couple different examples from other companies. So in this example from a manufacturing company, we focused on the team that they had today and suggested some restructuring to better align with how they would need to serve the business departments in the future. We also planned 1 to 2 years out, considering the staffing requirements for immediate needs, as well as and as those needs change with the progress laid out in the strategy that we had planned in parallel. And you can see here in the dotted blue boxes here that the groups were organized front end and back end as well to best, in that scenario, was the best for that organization to support the way their business operated. So here's another example to show you how you can be flexible and consider the existing org structure and really find that organic fit. So here you can see distributed ad hoc report developers over in the business departments, an existing engineering team, which had already existed, that's going to focus on operational data, and then the new recommended BI team to focus on analytics and management of data required for analytics. So again, it doesn't have to completely fit a textbook model. It's just important to find the right fit. So that's the end of element 4. All right, the 5th element of a successful data strategy is culture change. Our ultimate objective with the data strategy and with data and analytics initiatives is to further our business strategy and business goals. If it sounds like I've been repetitive with that, it's for a reason. We can't achieve this if no one is actually using the data. So possibly the most overlooked function of data strategy is accounting for the culture change that will be required to achieve our strategic goals. We must make changes to increase analytical maturity, and that means we need to plan for change management. New technologies, new data sets, new dashboards, sometimes data for the first time in business processes that did not utilize data before. Those are all examples of changes that we need to account for. Success goes beyond the implementation. So these bars right here are the common view that or kind of narrow view that I find a lot of companies think from this sort of perspective. All right, we have a plan. We're going to build out this new data solution. Maybe it's a data warehouse and some dashboards. We built it out. We ingested the data. We built the dashboards. We signed off on the data. We validated that the data was accurate. great, we're done, right? We're data driven now. But actually not. So that's probably the most common pitfall that we see people fall short. Like, you've done so much great work to that point, and by embracing the other dependent components that we've been talking about, especially culture change, that's how we can get to that last bar. And if we don't consider that, we're going to fall short because maybe we haven't factored in what the business needs when we were designing the project from the first place. We haven't enabled them properly to get good user adoption with training or data literacy. Maybe we haven't gotten the right buy-in. Maybe we didn't put the right governance in place. So those are all dependent factors that can help us achieve that cultural change that we need to get to for the business to embrace all these wonderful things that we're building for them with the data and analytics. All right. So going back to our CareQuest example again here. So CareQuest is such a great success story. And one of the reasons that they achieved this is they did think about the culture change that would be needed. So they supported this in a variety of ways. One was understanding that importance of early business involvement. They made 24 business stakeholders available when we were designing CareQuest data strategy. They also built that data strategy plan and communicated to executives and across the organization. Keep mentioning that communication is so important to start building the understanding and culture change required. We looked at that maturity model earlier. They identified key areas to support culture change, and then they acted on it. They foresaw that this was going to be investment for them, and they followed through with it, and they made a lot of progress in a short amount of time. And then finally, project prioritization driven by business impact and value. We developed a list of 45 use cases, and that assisted with the prioritization of those initiatives into the actionable roadmap, one that's, again, going to build foundation while also providing immediate value so that we're building those success stories and building that positive impression of data and analytics initiatives. So with renewed trust and accessibility to the data, analytics are positively impacting CareQuest's progress towards their organizational goals. And that culture change is still ongoing as well. They're currently working on the idea of treating data as a curated and automated asset versus as an ad hoc data pull. And also, most importantly, I want to call out that they have a really awesome champion who is driving action and is challenging his organization to leverage the new tools and capabilities. All right, so our sixth element of a successful data strategy is data governance. Data governance is putting the mechanisms in place to have accountability and follow through that what we're building is true to the plan that we designed. However, companies often don't understand and can be burned out on poorly planned data governance. That's why it can be helpful to frame it more in terms of how governance affects the business. And by the way, these are real quotes that we've gathered over the years of doing data strategy engagements with our customers, and really common things that we hear that indicate that there is less data governance at an organization than they need. So those are things like, we have lots of reports but no insights. I don't trust the numbers. Not being confident about if we're in compliance or not. Oh, and like really commonly we hear things like, my data is siloed, I'm fighting fires, not making progress. That's another big one. So by adding more data governance, we can flip the script on that. And we can hear more positive quotes like confidence in our compliance processes, that people are confidently using data to make decisions, things like they have actionable information and they trust their data. So the biggest pitfall that we see our customers fall into with data governance is not customizing their approach. And because of that, we've developed our own Analytics8 golden rules of data governance. So the first golden rule is that we need to design a governance solution that's practical, maintainable, and proportional, meaning that we are taking into consideration parameters such as the size of the company, the current maturity level, availability of business users, types of data, all of those things are kind of factored into what the right data governance approach is for that organization. The second rule is that we want to invest in governance as a program, not a project with a start and end date. And this is a key area to find a good balance, because we, again, want to make sure that the benefits of governance don't just end after a project ends, but that does require some level of overhead. And we also don't want to have too much overhead that that governance becomes burdensome and burns out our business users. So finding that right fit between those two and building confidence in governance as we go forward. And then our third golden rule is that data governance is not only a tool. There's a lot of great tools on the market to help our customers with data governance, but we want to make it clear that it's not an easy button. So and in addition to that, there's so much benefit that you can get out of starting to implement the people and process side of governance and see benefits of that governance before you necessarily have to invest in a tool. And knowing if you should invest in a tool to help with the maintenance and adoption of your governance processes, and or when you should invest in a tool, is a common conversation that we have with our customers and kind of help guide them to the right approach there. So at CareQuest, we helped them evaluate their existing governance. They already had some great governance and MDM initiatives going on, so we were able to kind of build from that. We also looked at things like getting a business glossary started, a data catalog that we were able to put together from scratch, and evaluate potential tools to use in the future. So our seventh and final element of a successful data strategy is the roadmap. A lot of things could be done, and finding what the valuable things are and what the most efficient order is our goal when we're building out the roadmap. So we want to account for dependencies, things that we've discussed in previous slides as well, such as readiness, getting that business sponsor, executive sponsor buy-in. We also want to consider the company timeline. Are there other dependencies going on at the organization that we should factor in when we're deciding to plan out our roadmap for achieving our data and analytics goals? Some of those things might include an ERP migration or an upcoming acquisition, or availability of key resources. For example, if there's certain seasons or times of the year when the people that we're going to need to include in the planning process may be more or less available. We also want to prioritize potential use cases and use that to design a roadmap that's going to help us build a foundation with quick wins and then iterate. And most importantly, we want to follow through on the plan that we design out. And we want this plan to be adaptable, and we want to revisit it and update the roadmap after each phase. A prioritization matrix is one technique or tool that you can use to help build out a roadmap. So when we're interviewing our business stakeholders, we're listening for all those wonderful opportunities of use cases where we could use data and analytics to make a difference in the business. And when we document those, we are also documenting them with an understanding of the potential business impact that they could have, as well as the technical feasibility involved with implementing or acting on that use case. And by rating each use case on those relative scales, meaning is this use case more or less complex than the other use case, we can then get to an overall score. Doesn't have to be one-to-one with our roadmap, but it helps inform and gives us some good ideas of good places to start when we're thinking about how we want to build phases in our roadmap. And when we plot those use cases on a graph based on those two scales that we were talking about, we can focus in on that upper right corner, which is going to be our sweet spot where we can get those quick wins. Those are going to be our use cases that will have high business impact, but are also highly feasible. So that way we're choosing that path of least resistance and creating an effective order where we're tackling some use cases, building a foundation with those. By building that foundation, we're also making the other use cases possibly slightly more technically feasible. And as we're tackling different data sets, there's also often overlapping needs with the types of data across use cases. So if we replot these use cases after each phase, we should see a migration or a shift of some of those use cases to the right as we build that foundation. All right, so back to our star use case CareQuest. So again, at CareQuest, we created a use case backlog of 45 prioritized use cases. And by doing that, we were able to hone in on that low-hanging fruit and try to find ways that we could address the urgent issues that CareQuest had, having that technology independence from an external company, while also building a foundation to make progress towards those new and exciting goals as well. So by prioritizing those use cases, we're then able to decide which of those we wanted to tackle, broke those out into the next phases. In this case, we broke it up into phase 2A and 2B, again, to kind of build out that foundation, start ingesting a lot of the data sources that needed to be available, and then starting to actually do some data transformation and curation of that data and make a lot of dashboards available. All right, and that is the end of our last and 7th element. So I'd like to open it up to Q&A.
While we're waiting on some questions to roll in, I wanted to do a little trivia to see who was paying attention. So we'll leave the chat open, and whoever answers this question correctly first will be the proud new owner of an Analytics8 drink tumbler. So I will read out the answers here. Whoever can identify what's missing first in the chat will win that tumbler. So which of the elements of a successful data strategy is not listed on this slide? The roadmap, maturity evaluation, the data team, architecture and technology, alignment with the business, and data governance. Selena was the first one. That was awesome. That was super quick. Selena, I'll get in touch with you after the webinar to get your contact information. There are lots of correct answers rolling in. Great. So does anybody have any questions for Christina on these 7 elements, what we discussed today, or even anything else about data and analytics? I have one for you, Christina. So say a company has their data strategy in place, but it's just not delivering for them. How often do you think companies should be revisiting their data strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I want to challenge people to think of their data strategy as a living document. So that's one way that we can keep it adapted to changes in our business priorities. But in order to do that, we need some form of governance. So until that kind of ongoing data governance program is in place, you might need to be a little bit more kind of proactive about when you want to update it. So maybe kind of setting a recurring schedule. Some common milestones are after each phase, if we've built out a roadmap, or also if there's any other big changes in the organization. So anytime we might be, if there's a merger and acquisition coming, or if you guys are going to be releasing a new product, or there's some other kind of big organizational change within the company, those are all really good points to take to go back and revisit your data strategy and make sure it is still aligned with the new business strategy and direction.
Awesome. Okay, Brandon asked, for moving to hybrid team setups, how do you get past some of the issues with undertrained, decentralized teams, specifically those teams within the business side of the house? There's obviously the potential for political fears when you enter into that kind of territory.
Yeah, another great question. So, and that is one of the downsides of a decentralized model, is that we have less control and standardization over the people who are developing in the individual business units. So some ways of helping to address that, I mentioned this concept of establishing a community of practice. That can sometimes be a nice compromise, because we are creating the community of practice to support those distributed developers in each of the business units. But the community of practice itself is suggesting, or depending on how strict you want to enforce it, a set of standards by which everybody can follow. So at least if those business analysts or those business developers are, data developers are working, one-on-one with their business units, they're still following the same kind of standard sets of best practices for whatever tool, like whatever reporting tool you're using. That can also be helpful to providing support to those teams as well. So that way you can roll out some consistent training so that everybody has the same, level of skills on that side as well. So that might be a good option, or sometimes even like a transition option too, if you are trying to move more centralized. But yeah, hope that answers your question, Brandon.
Okay, from Darren. Curious if you see topics such as MDM, CRM, CDP, etc., as explicit elements of data strategy, or technologies enabled by the data strategy.
Good question. Yeah, so both. So I think that, well, first of all, MDM, master data management, can be a pretty broad topic. We've actually helped customers kind of navigate when you're talking about MDM, like what do we mean? So there are scenarios where it's kind of a much longer term roadmap. We're integrating with existing systems, and that's the more kind of formalized MDM. In that case, there's definitely overlap with our data strategy. And for example, if we're going to build like a data strategy steering committee, somebody from the MDM group will want to include them. Like, we all need to be in communication and in sync, but when you get to that kind of more formal side of the house, there's more likely going to be like a separate group to help tackle and monitor that, while still having a representative in that kind of central steering committee.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment. If anybody thinks of anything after the call, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll go ahead and wrap up for today, but just to let you know, the recording will be sent out later this afternoon for you to rewatch, or send it out to your colleagues. Also, if you want to access more data and analytics resources, our newsletter is a great resource. We send it out once a month. You can sign up for that on our website. It's called The Insider. Additionally, Christina and several members of our exec team and other consultants are very active on LinkedIn. So go find us over there, because there's some good conversations going on over there. But I think that's it for today. So again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. And I hope that you found this content helpful. I thought it was great. Great job, Christina. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.